So I think for me the biggest challenge was people, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's a very different culture how we approach friendships and cultural relationships, how we talk to colleagues at work. It's a very different way of communicating, and I found it very difficult to adapt to that at first because I thought it would be closer to Spain. So it was very difficult to learn what was normal or correct or polite in Belgium and how to adapt the way I talk to people and the way I communicate. And also, Belgian people are much more direct in a way than Spanish people, so they tend to be more short in the way they answer questions, for example. And at first, I would be offended by some answers. Then, with time, you learn, oh no, that's normal. But it's still a work in progress to adapt and to realize that it's
So today I have a very special guest. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Anna, and I come from Spain, and I work with Blessing.
So, so how long have you lived in Belgium?
Uh, Almost 7 years. So 7 years in September,
So,
and it's August now.
right, 7 years. So how has it been? Why did you move to Belgium, if I may ask?
Yeah, so I came to do my master's. So when after I finished my bachelor studies in Spain, I wanted to continue study, and I was doing international relations at the time. So Belgium, Brussels seems like the right step for it. So that's why I chose Belgium, specifically Brussels, to come to study and do my master's here.
Okay, right. And then you decided to stay afterwards?
Yes. So I met my boyfriend after 2 months of being in Belgium. He is Belgian and he had a full-time job in Belgium. So after a while, we both knew we wanted to continue with the relationship, but we also knew we did not want to do long distance. So we had to make a decision, and the most logical decision was for me to stay because I had come from Spain and I was a student, so I didn't have a full-time job, and he had already his life in Belgium, so it made sense for me to be the one staying in Belgium.
So how was that for your family? Because when you actually told them that you, because I know they expected that after school you come back home, or
Not really. So my family comes from Tenerife, which is an island in the south of Spain, and I had gone to Madrid for my studies. That's for some countries it might not be too far, but it's a 3-hour flight for us. So I had already been away from home, and I had also gone to other countries after my studies. So my parents always say they had a very clear idea that I was not coming back home after my studies. So even if I came back to Spain, I wouldn't go back necessarily to my hometown, to where they live. So it wasn't such a big shock that I wasn't coming back.
Okay, so and for you also, there was no difference in how things are being done or culture or
Yes, I did not expect it, so it was a bit surprising because it's Europe, so you expect it to be very similar, but you still have surprises and different cultural shocks that I think they shock you more than if you lived in a country that you expect it to be different. So that was a bit of a challenge that you expect it to be similar, and then you have to adapt still to the
yeah,
new
because
culture.
I was reading somewhere and someone was saying that if you go on holiday to somewhere and you stay there for a couple of days, you'll be like, I can move here, I can really stay here. But when you actually move, it's quite, you see there are differences in the way things are done, because seeing from outside is different from being inside. So
Yes.
what are the things that you saw? What are the challenges you had, and how did you overcome it?
So I think for me the biggest challenge was people, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's a very different culture how we approach friendships and cultural relationships, how we talk to colleagues at work. It's a very different way of communicating, and I found it very difficult to adapt to that at first because I thought it would be closer to Spain. So it was very difficult to learn what was normal or correct or polite in Belgium and how to adapt the way I talk to people and the way I communicate. And also, Belgian people are much more direct in a way than Spanish people, so they tend to be more short in the way they answer questions, for example. And at first, I would be offended by some answers. Then, with time, you learn, oh no, that's normal. But it's still a work in progress to adapt and to realize that it's just a different culture.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because like where I come from, if you're working in an office, your colleague is your friend. So like we build close relationships. We extend it outside the office. It might not be really close, but to some extent
Yes.
you're close. But with here, it's like once you leave the door, it's out. Everything is ended. When we come back tomorrow, we can continue from
Yes.
where we stop. But outside this, there's nothing. I struggle with that a bit, but now I understand that that's
Mm-hmm.
how things are being done here. It's not like they don't want it, but for them it's like they try to separate their work
Yes.
from people they meet,
Mm-hmm.
and they are more closer to their family. We have that family bond, but I see that things are just different, and
Yeah, it's just different.
that's the way it is,
Yeah, I
and
had the
that's.
same thing. We live more in community, I would
Mhm,
say, in
mhm,
Spain.
mhm,
I don't know if as much as for you, but
mhm,
we live much more in community.
mhm,
So it's very normal to still meet your colleagues after work and do stuff after
mhm,
work.
mhm,
So that was a big challenge to adapt and to be like, oh no, it's not that they don't like me, it's that this is just the way things are
mhm,
done.
mhm, mhm. And looking at you, because I think one time we were having a conversation, and you said you've lived in Japan,
In Korea, I lived in South Korea for 1 year for my studies.
and can you living in that part of the world? Because can you take us through that? Can you just tell us?
So it's a bit different because it's for your studies. So
Mhm,
it's okay to not adapt 100%. I feel like
mhm,
you live in a much more international environment.
mhm,
So here it's like you have to adapt and you have to get involved with the locals, so with Belgian
mhm,
people.
mhm,
But when I was in Korea as an international student,
mhm,
it was fine to just be friends with also international people.
mhm,
So that made things a bit easier. But of course, that doesn't mean you're really integrated within the
mhm,
culture. And I think what was easier as well is it's so far away and it's something that you know it's going to be different. So
mhm.
you do your research much more. At least I did. So I
Okay,
knew what to expect. It
okay.
still doesn't prepare you 100%, but
Mhm,
I knew how people communicated. I
mhm.
knew what cultural differences. I knew about food. So I had done a lot of research. So
Wow,
that
that's
was
good.
easier in a way because I knew what to expect.
So when you were there, you didn't feel like maybe people looked at you
Oh
differently,
yes,
or they
you look
addressed you.
different.
Yeah, just looking different. How did
Honestly.
that work for you
um,
mentally?
I think when I went now it's much more touristic than when I went. I was there 9 years ago.
Hmm.
It's changed a lot. I expect.
So
Um,
young.
yes, I was 20.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I was 20 when I moved to Korea, but it was just for 1 year for my
Yeah,
studies.
but 1 year it's a long time, yeah. If you look at it.
Yes, it was supposed to be for 6 months, and then I extended it for 6 more months. Um, People treat you differently,
Mhm,
and I think that's also because you also look different.
mhm,
I'm not Asian, that's very clear.
mhm, mhm,
I think it was harder to adapt or to get involved with the local people because they immediately there's a feeling of otherness and a feeling that you don't belong 100%.
mhm,
But as I said, because it was just for a year, I was an international student. I
mhm,
think it didn't bother me that much. I
mhm,
think if I was trying to make a life there, then it would have bothered me.
mhm,
But because of the way I was living life at the
mhm,
moment, it
mhm.
was fine.
So also at school, it was fine with the. You could understand everything that was going on, or did
Um,
you struggle in that aspect? Because I know.
so it works very different from European universities, as far as
Mm,
I can say. So
mhm,
each class had like 10% of international students that
mhm,
could attend.
mhm,
Um, so they were expecting international students. I
mhm,
couldn't take any class I wanted. It was specific classes that I
mhm,
had to take. I
mhm,
don't know if that was my university or if it
mhm,
applies for every university.
mhm.
But yeah, the classes I took were actually taking into account that international students were going to be taking them. So I think they
Mhm.
made an effort for that for us.
Okay, because the reason why I asked that question, because I remember while I studied in the UK, most people who moved, they could understand, but not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's some lecturers that speak you understand, but there are some they say things and you don't understand. And I see that a lot of people kind of struggle in that aspect. It's not like they were not brilliant, but
Mm-hmm.
because it took time,
Yeah.
because it actually takes time. Luckily for me now, I can understand all accents. It actually takes time for your
Yeah.
brain to just function and
Mm-hmm.
get used to it, and so okay, now you understand how this person speaks. And so if someone else even speaks in this very strange way, you get to understand. So did you?
I had that more with people than with classes. So the
Okay.
classes I took were all in English,
Mm-hmm.
and the teacher spoke all with a very good American accent. So
Wow.
that was very easy.
Mm-hmm.
But with the students, that was a bit difficult because, of course, they had their own accents.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that as I was speaking, I learned a bit of Korean, but of course, not enough to speak it fluently with people. I would accidentally imitate the Korean accent when I was speaking English. You copy them because
Yeah.
it's also not my first language.
Mm-hmm.
So you adapt the grammar as well. It's a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of mix Korean and English grammar
Mm-hmm.
when they're speaking, and you end up copying it as well a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that was funny. It did take a bit to get used to it, but not too much. I think because English is not my first language,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm also struggling sometimes to speak it. So I think that was easy.
Yeah, I see that you're very international. You speak English, you speak French, you speak Spanish, you speak a bit of Korean, like you
Yeah,
just said, and now you speak Dutch.
I'm learning. It's still a work in progress.
So how is learning language for you? Is it something
I
that
find it very difficult, Dutch. Um, it's very different from all the languages I speak. Some people say it's close to English, but it's really not. The grammar is very different. And they have a lot of accents. For such a small country, they have a lot of dialects and accents. So I find that very difficult to learn. And then when you are a foreigner and you have an accent, a lot of people to help you, they switch to English.
yes?
So I go to the supermarket and I try to speak, and if I struggle, they will immediately switch to English, which is super sweet. Like I know they're trying to help, but sometimes it's frustrating because you want to continue in Dutch and to continue
Yes.
improving.
On Wednesday when I was going home, I saw someone outside, and she was like, "Ah, have you been on holiday? Bless you," in Dutch. And I continue, and I said Southwest France, and then immediately she switched to English. And I was trying to prove to her that I could speak Dutch, but I just continued the conversation in
Yes.
English. And when I got to my car, I was like, why didn't you just continue? But because she had Southwest France, so she was like, okay, maybe you could not pronounce it in English. So she just went straight to speak in English. And I was trying to prove to this person I could speak just so I understand the frustration. But yeah. So would you like to take us through one of the challenges that you have had living outside your home country? It could be in Belgium, it could be in Korea or somewhere else, and how you're able to overcome it?
I think it's still a challenge, but I still get homesick. I've been away from my hometown for over 10 years now. And it's still a challenge to overcome. It's not just missing your family or your friends, it's missing a lot of things. It's missing the weather, it's missing food. So it's very difficult sometimes to miss those things. And sometimes it's not things that you can put your finger on. Like sometimes you just miss home, and it's a very strange feeling. Because now I call Belgium home. I'm very happy in Belgium, but sometimes you still miss that feeling of familiarity of something that you've grown up with. I guess I call my mom every time I get homesick. I just call my parents. Luckily, we live in an age of technology, so it's very easy. I found a Spanish restaurant very good near where I live, so I also go there when I'm feeling homesick.
Yeah.
So my boyfriend now knows if I'm having a hard day, that's the place we go to, because it's very good, owned by Spanish people. So I just try to find comfort in my day-to-day life in Belgium, which is not always easy, but yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Like I like the fact that you said you found a Spanish restaurant where you could go to.
Yes.
Like for me, we don't. In Leuven, there's no Nigerian restaurant. You really have to go to Brussels, and when you go to Brussels, you don't get. It's not the same, and you don't get value for your money, and it's not like I know when you go to Italian restaurant, it's different. It's
Yes.
Italian people. You could like it's home. But for me, I don't feel it.
Yeah, so
now-
this is a small restaurant in Vilvoorde. Recommended if anyone wants to go. And it's family owned, so it's a family. Everybody speaks Spanish. Even the Belgian people that work there speak fluently Spanish. So it's very nice to just go to a place and not have to think about what you're saying and how you're saying it. You can just be yourself.
So what would I want to ask you now at this point? So what would you recommend for someone who is going through a hard time being in a new environment? Because new environment can also be just relocating to a new city. What advice would you give to that person?
I think it's a very difficult advice to follow. I'm the first one that needs to follow my own advice, and that would be reach out to people.
Yeah.
Talk to people. Even if you think you're the only one going through that feeling, I've had it in Belgium. Even Belgian people are going through hard times as well.
Yeah.
They also have to adapt to new works, new cities. They also move around. So I would say reach out to people. People understand how you're feeling, and don't be shy about it. Don't feel bad that I should not be having a bad time, or this is that I'm young and I should be enjoying. It's a new city. It's a new experience. I should be happy with what I have. It's normal to be going through a hard time. So I would say reach out to people that you know. Try to make new friendships and be the first one to do it. Like don't wait for people to come to you.
Okay. I would also say don't be scared because
Yes.
I had this podcast in mind and I spoke to my manager about it and everybody on my team like do it.
Yes.
And I was scared because I didn't know how people will react to it and I didn't know if I go like coming to you because when I told you and I was really happy about it, but you have that fear. So even if you're in a new environment or you're in a new place, if you have something you really want to do it because just doing this with people gives me like a sense of belonging. Just and being here talking to me, and I've also spoke to some people in the organization. It gives me like some sense of belonging. I'm happy about myself. I'm happy about my progress, and I get to know people more because we've spoken, but not to this length. We talk, but it's not to this length. So like she said, reach out
Just
to
do it.
people. Yeah, just do it.
I haven't got into that extreme level, but I joined a book club, for example. So I like reading, and
Yeah.
that's a way to reach out to people that
Yeah.
have interest with you, so
Mhm.
common hobbies. And it's not so out there as a podcast on the internet, but it's still nice. You have to, don't be scared and take the first step towards what you want to achieve.
All right, we've come to the end of today's section. If you enjoyed everything you've just heard, please can you leave a comment on the comment section below? Please like, share my content. And if you have a topic around this subject area you want us to talk about, you can leave it on the comment section below. And thank you for staying with us at Settling In with SA Blessing. And bye bye.